Los Angeles, February 2019. An unpretentious Italian restaurant, far from the crowds of Sunset Boulevard. The clock showed 7 p.m., and Ozzy Osbourne was about to have one of the quietest dinners of his life. But he didn't know yet that in exactly 16 minutes, a single question from a 5-year-old child would make him rise from his seat, and that night he would become part of an entirely different story. Rosario's Trattoria was one of those rare establishments that deliberately chose to stay away from Hollywood's bright lights. Its walls held framed old family photographs, faded artificial flowers sat in the corners, and every table was covered with red and white checkered cloths. This wasn't a place where celebrities came to be seen. This was a family restaurant where Tony Rosario had been making the same dishes with the same recipes for 40 years, where regulars were greeted by name and where tipping wasn't mandatory. This was exactly why Ozzy loved this place. Here, nobody treated him like the Prince of Darkness. He was just the old man in the corner, and that was exactly what he wanted. Sharon wasn't in Los Angeles that night. She had a business meeting in London and had given Ozzy strict instructions over the phone. Eat healthy, go to bed early. Ozzy had heard that familiar worry in his wife's voice, and had accepted with his usual grumble. But he didn't want to sit at home and doze off staring at the television in Sharon's absence. He'd forced himself outside and told his driver Marcus to take him to the nearest quiet restaurant. Marcus had known his boss's ways for years. Sometimes the man fled from crowds, sometimes he fled from loneliness. Tonight was the latter. Ozzy sat at the corner table of the restaurant. When the waiter came, he ordered without looking at the menu. Fettuccine Alfredo, a warm bread basket, a glass of red wine. Sharon would have forbidden the wine, but she, unfortunately, wasn't here. 6 or 7 tables were occupied in the restaurant that evening. An elderly couple was quietly eating their meal by the window. A group of young women was celebrating a birthday, and in the middle rows, at an angle where Ozzy could see clearly, sat a man and 3 children. The first thing that caught Ozzy's attention was the silence. 3 children, far quieter than they should be in a restaurant setting. They weren't yelling, they weren't running around, they weren't fighting. They just sat there, staring at the table, as if something in the world had gone fundamentally wrong. The man appeared to be in his mid-30s, but the circles under his eyes made him look 10 years older. His hair was disheveled, his beard was a few days old, and his shirt collar was wrinkled. He was holding the menu but not reading it. He was just staring, not at the page, but at a point, at nothing. Ozzy normally didn't interfere in other people's business. After years of having his own life picked apart by the media, he had learned to respect other people's private moments. But something was catching his attention. The children's eyes kept drifting to their father, filled not with fear, but with worry, as if they were watching him, as if they were waiting for something to happen. And that exhausted, broken man didn't even notice. He was lost in his own dark thoughts. The waiter approached the man's table. He had clearly come to take their order, but the man didn't respond. The waiter cleared his throat politely. The man raised his head, and Ozzy saw that look. He recognized that look. He had seen it in the mirror years ago, in moments when hope had run out, in times when he wanted to give up and walk away from everything. This was the look of despair. The man looked at the menu and said something, but his voice was too quiet for Ozzy to hear. He only saw the man take out his wallet from his pocket, count what was inside, and put the menu back down. Then he turned to the children and said something. The children's faces fell, but they didn't protest. They just nodded. Ozzy's food arrived, but he couldn't take a single bite. His eyes kept drifting to that table. The man had only ordered food for the children, nothing for himself. 3 children were sharing 3 small portions of pasta, and the man sat in front of his empty plate, watching his children eat. Every now and then he tried to smile, but the smile died before reaching his lips. The oldest girl tried to offer her father some pasta from her own plate, but the man gently refused. It was obvious he was saying he was full, but nobody believed it. And right at that moment, everything changed. The youngest child, the blonde girl, got down from her chair. Her father didn't notice. The other children were occupied. The little girl, in her pink dress, began walking through the restaurant. She passed between the tables, narrowly avoided a waiter's legs, and came straight to Ozzy's table. Ozzy saw the small figure approaching but didn't move. The girl stopped in front of the table, raised her head, and looked at Ozzy. Her eyes were huge, innocent, yet at the same time held a depth that adults couldn't comprehend. Ozzy leaned down, trying to get to eye level with the girl. "Hello, little lady," he said, his voice unusually soft. The girl didn't blink, as if she was trying to make a decision whether or not to trust this stranger. Then she spoke with a clarity that cut through the hum of the restaurant. "Mister, why does my daddy always cry?" The question hung in the air. The expression on Ozzy's face changed. Over 50 years of stage experience, thousands of interviews, countless unexpected moments. But these 5 words had caught him unprepared. The little girl was still looking, waiting for an answer, because children wait for answers. For them, the world is simple. Questions are asked and answers come. But the answer to this question wasn't simple. Ozzy knew this, and in the little girl's eyes, in the gaze that kept drifting to her father's table, he understood that this child already knew the answer. She just wanted someone to say it, someone to explain it, someone to tell her that everything would be okay. Ozzy took a deep breath. He set his fork on the edge of his plate and looked at the little girl. "What's your name?" he asked in a gentle voice. The girl answered, "Emily." Ozzy smiled, a real smile, not a stage smile. "Emily, that's a beautiful name. So, Emily, where is your daddy sitting?" The little girl turned and pointed to their table. At that exact moment, the man had raised his head and was looking around in panic. He had noticed his youngest daughter wasn't in her seat, and there was pure terror in his eyes. When he saw Ozzy and realized his daughter was talking to this older man, he came to the table almost at a run. "I'm so sorry," the man spoke, catching his breath. "I'm really sorry if she bothered you. Emily, how many times have I told you not to talk to strangers?" The man's voice was trembling. Whether from exhaustion or embarrassment, it wasn't clear. Ozzy stood up. He made eye contact with the man. And in that moment, 2 fathers saw each other. One, the wildest rock star on the world stage. The other, an ordinary man about to be crushed under the weight of life. But both knew the same thing. For your children, you do everything. You give everything. You give up yourself. "No bother at all," said Ozzy, his voice calm but firm. "Emily is a very sweet child. Actually, just the right person came to talk to me." The man was confused, didn't know what to say. Ozzy continued, "My name is Ozzy, and I think I'd like to have dinner with you tonight, if you'll allow me." The man hesitated. His eyes wandered over Ozzy's face as if trying to recognize him. Then he took little Emily's hand and stepped back. "Thank you, but we don't want to disturb you," he said, his voice low and tired. "We were just leaving anyway." But Ozzy didn't move. Years of stage experience had taught him something. People don't accept help the first time. Pride, shame, fear, they all get in the way. "Look, friend," said Ozzy, his voice low but sincere. "I'm a father too. I raised 3 kids. And let me tell you something. I know how hard it is to be somewhere alone with 3 children. I know that loneliness. So please, let me be here with you tonight. Let me at least buy you a coffee." Something broke in the man's eyes. Maybe it was his pride, maybe his resistance, maybe the wall of loneliness he had built up over days, over weeks. He took a deep breath and nodded. Ozzy smiled, returned to his table, and signaled the waiter. Within a few minutes, the small table in the corner of the restaurant had transformed into a family of 5. The man sat across from him, the children on the sides. The oldest girl, Emma, was still holding little Emily in her lap. The middle boy, Liam, couldn't take his eyes off Ozzy, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. Ozzy picked up the menu and turned to the waiter. "Bring everything everyone at this table wants," he said. "Pizza, pasta, dessert, whatever they want, and a coffee for me." The waiter nodded and walked away. The man tried to protest, but Ozzy raised his hand. Please, you're my guests tonight. Besides, the children look hungry." The children really were hungry. The 3 portions of pasta they had shared earlier hadn't been enough. Emma asked in a timid voice, "Can we have pizza?" And Ozzy smiled. "As much pizza as you want, little lady." The man clasped his hands together on the table. His fingers were trembling, and Ozzy noticed. "I didn't ask your name," said Ozzy to start a conversation. The man raised his head. "Michael," he said. "Michael Torres. And these are Emma, Liam, and Emily." Ozzy looked at each child one by one and greeted them with a nod. "A beautiful family, Michael. Your wife is a lucky woman." The moment he said it, he realized his mistake. Michael's face darkened, his eyes dropped to the table, and for a moment he seemed to forget to breathe. The children went quiet at the same instant, as if an alarm had gone off. Michael spoke after a long silence, his voice close to a whisper. "Sarah, my wife, died 8 months ago. Brain hemorrhage. We were sitting at breakfast, the kids were getting ready for school, and she just collapsed. I called the ambulance, but we lost her before we reached the hospital." Hearing this, the expression on Ozzy's face changed instantly. "I'm so sorry, Michael," he said. "I'm truly sorry." But the story didn't end there. Ozzy could feel it, that the weight on the man's shoulders couldn't be explained by grief alone. And he was right. Michael continued talking, as if a dam had burst and the words couldn't be stopped. "After Sarah died, everything fell apart. I was a graphic designer, worked at a small agency, but I had to keep taking time off to take care of the kids, and between daycare costs, babysitters, hospital bills, my salary stopped being enough. They let me go 3 months ago. I'm on unemployment now, but it's not enough for rent this month. Tomorrow is eviction day." Ozzy's heart tightened. 3 children, a family about to become homeless, and a father trying to buy his children a meal in his final days. "That's why you didn't order anything for yourself?" said Ozzy. Not a question. A statement. Michael nodded, his eyes glistening with tears, but not letting them fall, holding himself together in front of the children. "I've got bus fare in my pocket for tomorrow. We have a cousin in Phoenix. Maybe he'll take us in, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure of anything anymore." Little Emily held her father's hand. "Don't be sad, Daddy," she said, her voice carrying that innocent clarity. "I'll share my pizza with you." This simple sentence tore at the hearts of both adults at the table. Ozzy blinked rapidly, trying to control his emotions. Just then the food arrived. Pizza, pasta, garlic bread, even special little desserts prepared just for the children. The table filled up and the children's eyes sparkled. But nobody started eating right away. Michael looked at Ozzy. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why are you doing this when you don't even know me?" Ozzy thought for a moment. Then he answered, his voice more serious than usual. "Because, Michael, I was once in a dark place too, a place with no way out. Sharon, my wife, pulled me out of there. My children gave me a reason to live. Now I'm here, you're here, and maybe this isn't a coincidence." Michael looked at him skeptically. "Who are you?" he asked. Ozzy shrugged. "Just a father, like you. Someone who was famous once, but right now just a tired old man. But I learned something, Michael. I learned it in my darkest moments. Pride solves nothing. Asking for help isn't something to be ashamed of. And accepting help isn't weakness. Sometimes you need others to survive. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." A long silence followed. Michael raised his head and looked at Ozzy's face, this time with a different gaze. A spark flashed in his eyes. "You," he said, his voice trembling. "You're Ozzy Osbourne, aren't you?" Ozzy smiled slightly but didn't answer. Michael continued, his words quickening. "I know you. I used to listen to Black Sabbath when I was young. The records are still at home. Sarah and I—" He paused, his voice breaking when he said his wife's name. "Our first concert together was yours. 2007, Staples Center, Los Angeles. That night I proposed to her." The expression on Ozzy's face softened. Thousands of concerts, millions of faces, but behind each one were stories like this. "Was that night a good night?" he asked, his voice low. Michael nodded, his eyes drifting far away. It was the best night of my life. Sarah cried, I cried, everyone around us was watching. Then he returned to the present and looked at Ozzy. And now here you are, in the year I lost my wife, on the night everything fell apart, helping me. What kind of coincidence is this? Ozzy shrugged. Maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe Sarah sent you here tonight. Tears began to stream from Michael's eyes. He couldn't hold them back anymore. I'm sorry, he said between sobs. I didn't want to be like this in front of the kids. But Ozzy shook his head. It's good for children to know their father is strong, but it's also good for them to see he can be vulnerable. Because weakness, when shared, transforms into strength. You've kept these 3 children going on your own for 8 months. That's true heroism. Emma got up from her seat and hugged her father. Liam joined in, and little Emily left Ozzy's side, went to her father, and wrapped her small arms around him. Ozzy watched from the table, his eyes moist but smiling. Sometimes families need a moment not to fall apart, but to rebuild. But the story didn't end there, because Ozzy Osbourne wasn't there just to buy them dinner. After the meal was finished, Ozzy took out his phone from his pocket. He called Sharon and explained the situation. When he hung up, he turned to Michael. You said tomorrow is eviction day, right? Well, there's no eviction tomorrow. 1 month's rent is on me, and you don't need to go to Phoenix if you want to stay in Los Angeles. Sharon has a foundation for families. Job placement, childcare, they help with everything. Michael tried to protest, but Ozzy cut him off. This isn't charity, this is debt. Life has given me a lot, sometimes more than I deserved, and I've learned that the only way to pay it back is to help others. 6 months later, Michael Torres had found a job at a small graphic design firm in Los Angeles. The children were continuing school. Emma had started taking piano lessons, Liam had joined the soccer team, and Emily knew that her daddy didn't cry anymore. Ozzy's foundation had opened not just the money, but the path itself. Every year, Michael sent Ozzy a card. The first card ended with this sentence: You didn't just buy us dinner, you taught us how to live again.